Hey everybody, oh Casey here. Um, it's been requested from my nephew that I do some storytelling of different things that happened to me while I was on the road driving a truck. I've had a lot of different things happen to me, and I just want to share for a little while about some of the funny things that happened while I was driving a truck. One of the funny things that I think is kind of funny is I was out in Texas and had a young man come up to me. I was sitting in a restaurant or truck stop, and there was a little bar type thing, counter, and I was sitting at that counter and having a cup of coffee and eating my meal, and this guy came up to me and sat down beside me and struck up conversation. Didn't think anything about it, but he said, "Hey, is that your truck out there in the parking lot?" And I said, "Yeah, it is." And he said, "Man, that's a really nice looking truck." And I said, "Well, thank you." At the time, I was driving a silver gray Volvo integral sleeper, really nice truck, and it had everything in it. It even had a sink with running water, believe it or not. So it was a real nice truck. But he come out there and he said, "Can I see inside your truck? I've never seen inside of a truck before." Well, you know what? I found out that was a lie. But anyway, and I said, "Sure." So he climbs up in the truck and he climbs back in the bunk, and I was sitting there in the driver's seat. I climbed up and got behind the steering wheel, and we were just chit-chatting, and he said, "Is this yours?" And I said, "No." I said, "It belongs to the company." And he said, "No, this. Is this yours?" And I said, "No, this truck belongs to the company." He said, "No, I'm talking about this." And I turned around to see what he was talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a very lewd scene. But he had something in his hand that should have been behind a zipper. And I just reached back with one hand like so, and I grabbed a hold of his collar, and I drug him right across the steering wheel and throwed him out into the gravels in the parking lot. That was awful. But that's just one of the things that happened to me. Another time I was up in Tennessee, near Bell Howell, Tennessee, and I had this Coca-Cola truck driver come on to me, and I was sitting there calling in, waiting for a load, and he just kept coming up to my truck and pestering me and wanting to have sex with me. And I said, "No, I'm not interested. I'm not interested." Finally, I called Coca-Cola, and I told him I got his truck number, and I did get his name, and I called Coca-Cola, and I reported him. I just got tired of it. I don't ever know what happened to him, but that's one of the things that happened. When I first started driving a truck many years ago, many years ago, back in the 80s, I was, you got to remember, I was just an old country boy. I was raised on a farm in Michigan, and I was pretty naive. I didn't know a whole lot of what was going on, but I thought I was pretty smart. And I got a job driving a truck, and I went to New York City. They sent me to New York City. Now here I am. You gotta imagine this. Let me see if I can show you kind of what I look like. Hold tight just a minute. I'll be right back. Yeah, things can change just a little bit. This is kind of what I looked like when I went to New York City. Except I had a cowboy hat on and cowboy boots, I always drove in cowboy boots. And we had, I looked real truck driverish. I had the big belt buckle and everything, but I did have real long hair. And so here I am. I go to New York City for the first time, this old country boy, and I'm wandering around while I'm waiting on my load. And I walked into this wig store. And I said, my goodness gracious, I have never seen so much hair in one place that wasn't on a head. And that lady looked at me and she thought that was really funny. She said, honey, where are you from? And I said, I'm from the country. And she said, yeah, I can about imagine. And it was pretty funny. We talked a little while and what have you, and finally I said, well, I got to go. And I walked out the door and went on up the street, and I went into the famous Macy's department store. And while I was in Macy's, I rode on a wooden escalator. Now, you know what an escalator is. It's the one with the moving stairs that just keep going. And this was wooden. It was held together with wood, not the metal ones like you see today. This was the original escalator in Macy's. And that thing was really, really neat. And I rode on it and looked around in Macy's. It's the famous Macy's that you always hear about. The one that puts on the Macy's Day Parade in New York City. And then I got ready to leave New York, and I have made several trips to this area in Manhattan is where I had to go. And I got ready to leave, and I was headed out of town, and next thing I know, I was on this very, very narrow road. I mean, it was really small. In fact, my truck took up the whole road. Now, mind you, I'm in an 18-wheeler, and here I am. I didn't know what to do, and this man or policeman on horseback rides up alongside of me, and he said, sir, and I rolled down my window, and I said, yes, sir. He said, can I ask you a question? And I said, sure. And he said, what in the world are you doing here? And I said, trying to find my way out. And he said, well, this is not it. And you're not supposed to be here with a truck. And I said, well, where am I? He said, sir, you're in the middle of Central Park. And there I was. I was in the middle of Central Park and trying to find my way out. And he said, follow me. And so I followed him, and he led me on out. And I said, I promise I won't ever come back. And he said, thank you. And I went back several years later, and they had stone columns up at all the entrances. You couldn't get a truck in there. But that was a real interesting time. One of my other trips to New York City, I had this, I'm pulling a big trailer, you know, and I said, one of my other trips to New York City, I was working my way in, trying to get into Manhattan, and I got down to 37th Street where I had to be, and I went to make a right-hand turn, and it's real tight, you know. I mean, it's real tight, turning onto a real tight road, and this big black guy pulled his Cadillac right up to the corner and stopped and jumped out just as I started in my turn. So I rolled my window down and I asked the man, I said, would you please move your car just a minute so I can get around this corner? And he said, no. And I just looked at him, and I didn't know what to say. So finally I said, sir, just till I get around the corner, could you just please back your car up so I can get around the corner? And he spoke these obscenities to me, starting with an F and a Y. And I thought, this is not very nice. And so then I said, one more time. I'm only going to ask one more time, sir. Would you please just move out of the way a minute so I can get around the corner? And he just looked at me and waved at me with his middle finger. And I said, okay, no problem. So I just pulled it down in low gear and I proceeded to turn the corner. And my trailer went right over the top of his car. I pulled it right up from one end, up over the windshield, smashed the windshield out, up over the top, down the back end, and when the back end wheels come off of there, my ICC bumper got a hold of his car and just tore the daylights out of what was left of it. And I just went on up and parked where I had to be, right up the street. Well, I got up there and I was right next to the police precinct and where I had to be. And he come running up there and got a cop and he said, hey, this stupid blankety blank truck driver just drove over the top of my car right over here on the corner. And that police officer looked at me and said, did you do that? And I said, yes, sir, I did. He said, why? He said, you didn't have to do that. And I said, no, sir, I didn't have to. But I asked the man 3 times if he would please move his car just so I could get around the corner. And these were his exact words, and I told him what they were. And he just looked at the guy and shook his head, and he said, you're stupid. He said, you deserve what you got. And went on his merry way. And I went on my merry way. I got my load, and I got out of there. And he just stood there looking, and I knew he was going to try and do something to me. But with all the cops around, I felt pretty safe. And not to mention, I had a little secret weapon in the truck. But I've had all kinds of things happen to me. I got out into California and got into a real mess out there one time, and got down into Miami, Florida, and had another mess down there. And I'll tell you a funny story that happened to me while I was in Miami. I got down there and I had $6.25 to my name. That's all I had in my pocket. That's all I had available to me. $6.25. Well, I got stuck down there for the night, and they advised me where I was at. Don't go wandering the streets. Stay in your truck. Don't get out. And I said, okay, no problem. But I got hungry that night, and I wanted to go out and get me something to eat, and I was pretty brave. So I got out of the truck, and I went for a walk down the street, and I seen this little tiny hole in the wall, Cuban restaurant. So I thought, I'll go in there and give it a try. They might have something that is cheap and I can get something to eat. So I went in there, and it literally was a hallway that went straight to the bathrooms in the back. And along one side, which would have been my left-hand side, there was a countertop along there with bar stools up. And that's all there was to the restaurant. Maybe there was a couple of tables on the wall on the right-hand side. I can't quite remember. But anyway, so I bellied up to the bar, as they would say, and I looked to my left to see what this guy was eating, and I looked to my right to see what that guy was eating. And it looked good, and I asked the guy on my right, I said, what is that? And he just looked at me real stupid. He couldn't understand English. And I couldn't understand what he was saying, so I just... the cook came out, and he was the waiter and the cook. He come out of the kitchen, and he said, can I help you? And I said, yes, sir. And he's a big black guy, a real nice guy. And I couldn't read the menu. The menu was up on the wall, and I couldn't read it. It was all in Cuban. And so I said, I like the looks of what he's got, and so can I get one of those? And he said, sure. And I had no idea what it was, for one thing, and I didn't know what it cost. Mind you, I only had, just a few dollars on me. So I said, okay. So he brought it out, and set it in front of me, and he said, would you like some black beans with that? And I said, sure. So he brought me a little bowl of black beans. Now, I don't know if you've ever had black beans, but them are the best black beans I have ever eaten in my life. And so I asked him how he fixed them. He said he fixed them with onion and bell pepper in there, and they were like a mush. And but they were so good, so good. So anyway, I eat my meal, and I'm thinking, I have no idea what this is going to cost me. And so he said, he gave me my bill, and I looked down at that bill and could not believe it. Now, I don't remember what all I had. I had fried plantains, and I had 2 bowls of the black beans, and I had some potatoes, and I don't remember what else all I had. But it was, I mean, I got full. It was a big plate of food. And it was $4.50. And I drank water with my meal because I didn't know how much I was going to have to pay. And it was $4.50. I had change. I couldn't believe it. But man, it was so good. Probably the best Cuban food I've ever eaten in my life. It was delicious. And I walked back to my truck, got my truck, and had a good night's sleep. And got up the next morning, got unloaded. Or no, I had when I went to get unloaded that afternoon, that's what it was. When I went to get unloaded, I pulled up in front of this little tiny, looked like a house, and I went in there. This is pretty funny. This was before the Cuban food now, okay? Same trip, just before the Cuban food. So I went into this little house, and this receptionist was sitting there, and I said, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I've got a load of videotapes for you, or I've got some videotapes for you. And she said, just bring them on in. And it was for a sandals commercial. You've seen those sandals commercials on TV. Well, she said, just bring them in here. And I said, no, ma'am, I don't think you understand. I said, I've got a whole load of them. She said, yeah, just bring them right here. And I said, ma'am, you don't understand. I said, look out the window. And she looked out there, and there sat this big semi-truck. And I said, that is full of your videotapes. And she said, oh, you can't bring those in here. I said, no, I know. And so she said, hold on a minute. So she got some guy, and he came out of the back, and he said, follow me. So I went back there with him, and it went into this great big room, and there was a huge table sitting there in the middle of the room, and it was surrounded, the table was surrounded with these ladies, all gibbering along. I couldn't understand a word that they were saying. And the guy that I was dealing with, he was an American guy. And he said, have a seat right here. And so I sat down in this chair at the end of his desk. He said, now I got to send you over to this printing company to get unloaded. And I said, okay. He said, because we don't have a loading dock here. And I said, okay, that's fine. And so I'm sitting in this wooden chair at the end of his desk. And now his desk is just covered with papers. I mean, it's probably one of the messiest desks I've ever seen. And he gets this guy on the phone at the dock where I have to go unload, and told him I had a load for him. And he said, okay, just send him over. And so he said, well, I'm going to put him on the phone with you, and you can give him directions on it. And he said, okay. So I get on the phone. Now, mind you, I'm stretching this cord all the way across the desk, and it's sitting, the phone's on the other end, and the cord is tight. And I'm writing down these directions, and I got just about done writing down the directions, and guess what happened? My chair exploded into 1,000,000 pieces, and I hit the floor. Then I drug all that stuff off his desk with that phone right down on top of me, and then the phone came down. And now I still got the phone to my ear. And he said, what was that? And I told him what happened. And that group of ladies that was sitting around that table saw that, and they just died laughing. They thought that was the funniest thing in the world to see. And here I am sitting in the floor, and I said, just give me the directions and I'll take care of this when I get done. So I finished writing down the directions and I hung up with him. And now I had to put all this stuff back on that guy's desk, and his eyes were that big. It was hilarious. I mean, probably the funniest thing that ever happened to me while I was driving truck. So I drive over to this printing company, and then they're the ones that told me don't go wandering around at night. And then I went and ate my supper anyway. But it was really funny. We had a good time, and I kind of missed those days. It was a lot of fun. I don't miss the job, though. I miss driving the truck. Haven't drove a truck in several years. And I love driving a truck. But anyway, my nephew, Eli, he told me I should share some of my stories that happened to me while I was on the road. And that's just a few. Ladies and gentlemen, I drove truck for 30 years. And I had a lot of things happen. I've seen a lot of stuff. I remember one time I was going into Canada and got stopped by Border Patrol. I'm going to leave that for another story. It was pretty funny. And but I got through customs. I didn't get in trouble, and I delivered my load. But anyway, hey, it's been great chatting with you. I've had a good time. I'm going to talk to you later. We'll see you on the next video. You have fun, and remember, go with God. Bye.